This video is a recording of a live event, about an hour and 15-minute webinar, and it's really packed with all sorts of energy healings and information and explorations into the fine abstract layers of creation. I hope you love it. If you do, please like and subscribe. So what we'll do is a brief description of what is energy healing, 3 minutes of silence, prayer of gratitude, and then dive into today's session. So, energy healing is this lovely technology of consciousness. Really, it is a technology of consciousness. It's a technology of awareness, because awareness is something we all have and we're all really good at focusing. And in energy healing, what we do is we use awareness, we focus it in on the areas that are a problem. Whatever symptoms or challenges we're facing, we focus our awareness in that way, in that direction. And awareness naturally brings a lot of resources with it, because awareness is source material. So wherever the awareness focuses, it enlivens wholeness. It enlivens, and health is wholeness. Health is wholeness. So awareness naturally does that. But another really important part of energy healing is getting to the root of a concern or situation, like making sure that we're focusing the attention on just the right spot, right? Because like if you have a symptom that's on the surface, say a boil on the surface of the skin, and we focus just on the surface of it, like a gardener who thinks he's gonna just focuses on the leaves. If the gardener only focused on the leaves, then he wouldn't know to put fertilizer on the root, right? So it's a sort of similar principle here, that in energy healing, we start with a symptom, which is on the surface, but we use awareness in a way that allows us to kind of dig down and get into the root or the cause of the symptom. And then using simple principles based on the nature of consciousness itself, enhance the healing effect or the effect of creating wholeness. We enhance that at that point where at the inception of the illness or problem. So that's what we're going to do in today's webinar. We're going to focus in, and this topic of today's webinar is healing for the systems of the body. So we're going to be looking mostly at systems, but we're going to go through that cycle many times in today's webinar. I've got a whole list of different systems we can look at. And as we do that, we gain direct experience of taking it from the surface, digging into the root, focusing the awareness and engaging principles of consciousness which enhance the integration of wholeness or divinity in that area. So we do that over and over again, many times in today's session, and we'll talk about it. So we have two strokes. We have the stroke of experience and the stroke of understanding. So we put those two strokes together, and we're doing it as a big collective, which is so cool, because when we do this as a collective, it's like we create kind of a momentum behind our work, because we're all kind of doing it together. I mean, some people are more engaged than others. We don't know. Maybe some of y'all are out there having your dinner or whatever, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because in the end, these webinars end up being seen by thousands of people, even in some cases, tens of thousands so far, tens of thousands of people. So what that means is that over time, it becomes a very large collective that focuses in on this process, experience and understanding of going from the surface into the root, and then bringing awareness to the root in a sort of very delicate manner that supports the integration of wholeness, and rinse and repeat. So that's what we're going to do. It's not too hard. Anybody can do this. This is great. Beginners, advanced, you can all do it. Thank you all for being with me. It means a lot to be with all of you and doing this, because I discover a lot of new stuff too, with the incredible light of our group shining on the topic at hand. And I really appreciate that. And I feel like it's an honor to be the voice of our group. So thank you. All right. So that's what energy healing is. The next thing is to take 3 minutes of silence. Why? Because this source of creation, which is the fundamental value, which composes attention, right? This is a technology where we're focusing attention. So we want to get the attention right. In the number one, get the attention right. So being or wholeness, that infinite, unbounded, immutable, eternal field of absolute consciousness, absolute being, divine being, that is the foundation for all the work. And it feels good for us to close our eyes and to just soak in that luscious, inebriating silence of being, particularly all together as a group. It's extra powerful and wonderful. So we're just going to do that. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. We'll take 3 minutes of quiet. Don't worry about anything. Whatever happens is good. If you have thoughts, no thoughts, it doesn't matter. Everything is good. And then after 3 minutes, I'll ask you to open the eyes. We'll take about a minute or so to open the eyes very slowly, because as we're coming out of that silence, we are integrating that wholeness as we come out. And we want to give the nervous system enough time to make that integration in a graceful manner. All right, let's close our eyes. All right. Let's slowly open our eyes. I'm going to do a prayer of gratitude to start off our meeting. You can take some more time while you're opening your eyes. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything. Thank you for being all of us and being all of our ancestors and being the process by which human life perpetuates. That's amazing. Thank you for being the eternal tradition of wisdom that connects the silent source of creation with the whole manifest field of creation. Thank you for our work tonight being efficient and profound and going always to the core or seed of the concern and addressing that in the highest and best possible way. May our webinar this evening meet and exceed everyone's hopes and desires for what we can accomplish together as a group. May we surprise ourselves. And may, and thank you. And may I say thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with all of you. Thank you for everything. Thanks for being with me. We're going to have fun. Okay. So tonight's topic is about systems. And I noticed when I originally conceived this topic, I was thinking, oh, body systems, we can go through each of the different body systems. So I wrote down a list of them over here, but I realized that, of course, as you know, our work always expands out from, because we're beacons of light. So I expect we will also be addressing systems like social, cultural systems, educational systems, political systems, economic systems, military systems, all the different other systems too, because really we're, you know, our systems, our physical body systems are connected in a very intimate way with systems, all the other systems too. And the other systems, the systems we create and produce as a culture, as a society, they reflect a lot of they reflect the systems that exist within us, and they help us understand ourselves. So it'll be good to touch on both of those. And what I was thinking I would at least start with, and then we'll see where we all go, because I love to cue off of you. I love to be tuned in to everybody in the group and to be really bringing out the information that's really interesting and pertinent for you. So, but I thought we would at least start with our own systems of the body. And I think there was actually a really nice general question that came in, but let's just see if that was a European question, because I want to save the European questions for tomorrow, obviously, because the Europeans, some of them are here, but not the one that asked this question. So let's see. Yeah, that's the European question. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so for some reason, maybe there's another question that came in that I'm missing. I'm thinking, but that's okay. We'll catch it tomorrow for sure. And I see there are a couple questions up here too. So I'd just like to start by saying the first system that we really have to look at is the first system that we really have to look at is the system of our healing collective. Oh, because this is our filter. This is where we're coming through the webinar tonight, and all the work we do and everything that we're doing here is in the context of our collective. So that's like really important. We need to look at that. All right. In the silence is the time that we tend to sort of like, it's like there's a sort of rearranging and settling that happens in those 3 minutes of silence at the beginning of our session. And I noticed this time that the energy at the very beginning seemed a little chaotic to me, just seemed a little chaotic. And it took a little while, a minute or something, to settle down. And at first I thought, oh, it's chaotic. Maybe something should be done to make it more orderly. And then I thought, no, let's just enjoy this. Let's just enjoy it as it is, because life brings lots of different experiences, and it's the differences of experience that make life interesting. So instead of trying to create some big order with it, I just let go. And what happened then was so interesting, because that deep, unbounded quality, it's like an ocean of light. It reminds me of an ocean of light, of pure light. There's an expression, or no, that's not the right word. There's no word to describe, okay, save for para Brahman, which is used to describe. But even that, para means beyond, right? And Brahman means everything. That's it, para Brahman, beyond everything. There's an ocean of light beyond everything. And that ocean of light is like our playground. And I was talking to one really sweet lady around the time, like last month, around this time, and she was saying that they're all the devatas and the, all the engaged forms of consciousness that make this universe function the way it does. But then it's considered in Hinduism, basically, that Krishna is sort of like beyond that. And I still don't completely understand it because I'm not Hindu. So please forgive me, I'm not Hindu. But that I understand Vishnu, Krishna is an avatar of Vishnu. But the way she described it, Krishna is sort of like beyond Vishnu. And that makes sense to me. Thank you, physicists. Thank you to the physicists, because the physicists explain how at those really like most abstract, unmanifest levels of creation, you don't get hierarchies of form the way we do in the relative field. In the relative field, you've got like cells, and then tissues, and then organs, and then systems, and then the whole body, and then we've got the society, we've got families, couples, and then family structures, and little communities, small communities, and bigger communities, and so on, all the way out to the ends of the universe. And it's very obvious that they kind of like nestle inside each other like that, and some are larger and some are smaller, right? Obviously the cell is small, and you can go the other way, subcellular, molecular, atomic, and so forth. But at this really, really, really deep level of creation, it's not like that. The forms are able to like go inside each other, like certain geometrical, yes, in geometry, like certain geometrical impossible formulas, like there's like a snake that eats its own tail, and it's constantly eating its own tail, something like that. There's certain expressions that sort of transcend the laws of nature of the relative. And so at that level of creation, that's, I think, how that works, that you can get a form that's great, and then it has an expression, but the expression is greater than its original, something like that. But the point is that opened up. And it's so light, it's so bright, and it's so light as in emotionally light, like blissful, like there's and containing everything, containing the seeds of everything. Anyway, so that dominated in our silence. And grace dominated. And grace is alignment with nature, alignment with natural law, alignment with dharma, alignment with the evolutionary trajectory of the whole creation. And it was about there that we ended. And then there was a lot of bliss coming out of the silence. So that was my experience. But as far as our group goes, I feel as if everything just naturally organized in that light that's beyond everything, para, beyond everything. And it's something that it's really important that we all understand, that we own that that's not just something like beyond everything we know. It's also like deep within our own nature. It's really good to know that. It's good to know. It's a resource. It's a resource. We'll probably be coming back to it. Some of the expressions of it are your pure potential is an expression of it. Well, everything's an expression of it. But one of the sort of purest ways that we experience it is our pure potential. But remember, pure potential is like as yet unrealized. And the next layer up from that is realized potential. And so realized potential, when the potential realizes in a pure and perfect manner, then we get divine expression. So divine expression is like the other end of the loop. It's like the expressed value of that. And so this is kind of the system that we're working with. And to put it very, very simply, so we just see it in a nutshell, you've got the home of all the laws of nature. You've got the source of creation, and it sprouts and it manifests as this whole multiplicity, and then it folds back into its own nature. And that cycle and that loop is fundamental to every system in the body, every breath we take, right? It's like wholeness, individuality, wholeness, right? Every syllable that comes out of the mouth, every beat, every cycle of the blood through the body, every movement of the nervous system goes through the gap. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to look at these systems in the light of this very, very simple principle that there's this cycle of wholeness expressing itself as multiplicity and then folding back to wholeness, which is fundamental. There's another principle here that when we're looking at systems, we're looking at kind of like teamwork in a way, like parts that work together to produce a sophisticated effect, we could say. And when we're looking at systems, there are usually three basic parts. There's like an administrator, and then there's an administrator, there's the process, and there's the outcome. And for those of you Vedic scientists, you know that's Rishi Devatan Chandas. So I thought it would be good to look at the systems also from that angle, from the angle of that 3-in-1 reality. All right, let's dive in. We need to do some healings for the different systems. So I just put them in a sort of basic order, and I put the nervous system first because it's, for one thing, it's the first system to form. The first part of the little tiny embryonic body is this, like a tube forms, and that's the nervous system. So I thought that would be a great place to start. Now, the different systems of the body, and this also ties into a really good question that came in, a really lovely sort of educated question. I love that. Every system of the body has an administrator and has a function, and then it has like the mechanical parts, right? The physical parts. So it's really obvious that the physical parts of the nervous system are the brain and the central spinal column and the nerves as they reach out to all the extremities. And I tend to think of our senses of perception, eyes, ears, sense of smell, sense of taste, and touch as kind of extensions of the nervous system. So I'm mixing the sensory system in a little bit with the nervous system because they're really intimately connected, all the the various brain cortices that associate with the different senses, and it just seems like a no-brainer. No pun intended. So that's the Chandas value, or the physical value. The Devata. The Devata are the function. The Devata, I think, We've talked a lot about devata, and we can also call those laws of nature, and we can also call them the underlying intelligences that are responsible for the running of any system. So there's a kind of intelligence, there's like a body intelligence that's responsible for how the system functions and keeping it well, like healing it if it gets sick or hurt and so forth. And I realize now that as I've been referring to that form, it really kind of includes both of those values of being both the administrator, but also activating the functions. And then here we do have a bit of a hierarchy, because in the case of the nervous system, of all the systems, but we'll use the nervous system as our example right now, there's an intelligence that's responsible for the whole nervous system. In the first place we access that is in the etheric body, which is just one level finer than the actual physical body. So we've got the physical nervous system, and then just under that you've got like an energy form of the nervous system that we'll call etheric. It looks like the nervous system, looks like your brain, looks like your spinal column, looks like the extended. But it's not, it's just energy. And it's the body. The etheric nervous system is the body of the intelligence. I mean, the physical nervous system is too, but the intelligence itself, it's sort of like the intelligence is more abstract than the mechanical part. I love it that we're doing this together, you guys, because like I am like seeing things that I did not see before. So I'm doing my best to share them with you. So we have the overseeing intelligence, and really, the overseeing intelligence, we could say, if we want to go to its root, what is the root of the administrator? The root is that wholeness. The root is the wholeness of being. The root is the universal, eternal play field. It's that play field of light. It reminds me of the light in this part of my picture. It's just so beaming. It's so radiant. It's so beautiful. That light is the administrator. It really is. And a lot of times we think, oh, well, the evolution that I'm going through, this is my personal evolution, or this is my personal karma or something. But you have to understand that personal karma is always shadowed by, or dwarfed, I think dwarfed maybe is a more word that I like to use, is kind of dwarfed by the evolution of totality. That the one wholeness of creation is really doing the big evolution here, and our individual personal experiences are just, they're like a little wave on the surface of that. So the big administrator, the big wholeness of creation is the big doer, and is overseeing and calling the shots, we could say, for the intelligence that's responsible for the functions of the nervous system in this case. And the functions of the nervous system are carried out by the devata, which are body intelligences that are designed specifically to activate the mechanism of the nervous system. So I kind of have a threefold structure right there. Thanks, you guys, for helping me see the tie into wholeness. Especially because it's the wholeness that's, that administrating wholeness that is attempting to, or I would say that is knowing itself through the functions of the nervous system. So we're going to clue in. Let's just take a minute. Let's just take a minute and clue in with everybody's nervous system. And I also want to check on this question, because I think this is a question about the nervous system. Yeah, it is. I'll read it in just a second. But first, I just want to feel. We just need to take a second and put our attention on our nervous systems. Just put the attention there on the nervous system. And you can feel, this is so cool. You can feel when you put your attention on the nervous system, you'll notice that there's a lot of consciousness in the nervous system. There's a lot of feeling in the nervous system. There's like more awareness and more consciousness and more sensitivity in the central nervous system than almost any other part of the body. If you notice, you'll notice that it's like very concentrated. There's concentrated awareness in the central nervous system. That's why I include the senses of perception, because so much of the time we're focusing our awareness out. Sorry, I put my camera out of focus. Speaking of out, there we go. So we put our attention on the nervous system. Everybody's just cluing in and just kind of like saying hello to the intelligence of the nervous system. And when I say the nervous system has its own like field of intelligence, or devata, that's a Vedic word that means the same thing. That is the devata. The devata value is non-physical. It's still manifest. This is a fine distinction. It's still manifest, but it's not physical manifest. Just like thoughts are manifest, feelings are manifest, we experience them, but they're not physical manifest until they show up physically. But the devata, because that body of the devata is not manifest, it is able to exist in creation longer than the physical mechanism of the nervous system. So the devata that oversees the nervous system and all the other systems, this goes the same for the other nervous systems that we will be talking about, that devata is it's ancient. It knows itself. It knows itself as ancient. It knows itself as having systemic roots throughout the entire universe. Like the whole universe has its own type of nervous system, right? So larger structures also. The devata of the nervous system knows its cosmic connections. This is the first thing that's happening, is a folding of awareness of the nervous system back in on its own nature. And as it's folding in, it's also folding out. It's folding in and out at the same time. And we're feeling the relationship of the central nervous system to the universe, to the rest of the universe. Good thing we have access to all the cosmic archives. The central nervous system is designed to process information, and the universe is the location where information is stored. All the photons carry the history of our universe, for example. They're really ancient, and they have physical bodies. And I'm feeling something that's a little bit like a kind of release or a purification up in the head area, particularly like right behind the eyes, nose, in the sinuses. There's some purification going on there. It looks like some clearing is taking place in order to accommodate the receiving and integrating of cosmic information in the head. I honestly encourage you to put awareness in the head. And when the purification is happening, then of course the thing to do is just to allow that, just to enjoy that process, that feeling of clearing out. Some discordant feelings are clearing out. And there's also some feelings of like, some discordant emotions, not terrible, more like habits of not looking. We can look into the universe. We can do that. Our nervous system can orient itself to be like a antenna to receive information directly from the universe. And that information tends to, as we've mentioned before, comes in through the crown of the head. Cosmic information. I've said this before, that's why people like those shows about the universe, like Star Trek and Star Wars and stuff, because they carry a little flavor of that. They carry a little flavor, expression of vision of ourselves as having done this, what we're doing now, which is getting used to and comfortable with receiving information directly from the universe. For those of you in the Northern Hemisphere, which I think is the majority of people here, this is a great time to be doing this work because we have more minutes of the day exposed to stellar energy, stellar information. And just enjoy the seed of that, the energy signature of that, because it's upgrading the physical mechanism of the nervous system to support accommodating the vast amount of information that's stored at cosmic levels of creation in ways that are really orderly and useful for you, right? So if we haven't been in the habit of looking that much into the universe, then we didn't have the archive space tidied up. But that's just happening right now. So there's a little bit shifting around, and that shifting around is being accommodated by, is being performed by the Devata. It's just a very gentle shift. And that's going to feel really nice. Even those of you who are in the Southern Hemisphere, because I know we got you online with us too. And, you know, you still get the nighttime, you know, you have the nighttime to enjoy the stars. And even in the daytime, you get the sun. Those who are having summertime right now, they're getting to enjoy the light and the brilliance like this, the brilliance of the sunlight. And the sunlight really is one of the structures of our environment that expresses the light of divinity more perfectly than almost anything else, right? The sun is amazing how it does that. Its body and its being, the way it functions, it's really living divine light. It's doing a great job. Okay, I want to read this question. It's a really great question. It's a very smart lady here. She said, of all the ways that the human body systems need to upgrade to fit a more modern environment, the nervous system and how it relates to the stress response is one of the most blatantly obvious to me. I definitely agree. I would like to thank this very sweet lady for the question, because her question ties together one of the pieces of information that was coming to me over the last couple of weeks. And as it was coming in, I was thinking, how does this relate to systems? But then when the question came in, it was like, oh, she tied that point into systems. So I love you. Thank you for doing that. The stress response for ancient man seems more like a switch with only two modes, right? Completely relaxed or danger fear mode. The senses communicate to the nervous system and the amygdala, and the hypothalamus responds by signaling epinephrine release, thank you. And it seems like the kind of stress response that is appropriate in today's modern world is much more like a scale from 1 to 10. And so her question is, what devatas oversee this process? And also, is there an upgrade available that enables the nervous system to categorize stressors more selectively? Yes. And so that was the thing that I had been noticing surfacing over the last week or so. And I'm like, I wonder how that's going to tie into today's session. So gosh, your question was just so flame on. I'm so grateful. Thank you. Okay, so one of the things I learned since our last webinar, so interesting, is that the autonomic nervous system, so that's a system within the system, right? So we went from the nervous system, we did some healing for that, now we're going into the autonomic nervous system. It's so important that all of our autonomic nervous systems are functioning optimally or optimized, because this is the part of the body that makes a difference of whether life is suffering or life is bliss. Basically, it seems to me, this is what I'm experiencing, is that it makes a difference whether life is suffering or life is bliss. So we have going with and maybe, did I mention this at the last webinar? I can't remember. I did? Oh, you can't remember either. Okay, well, we can't. We're old. We can't remember. So we're just gonna. So we're just gonna mention it again because every time we mention it, it comes out slightly different. Anyway, got a slightly different audience today. All right. So the autonomic nervous system is comprised of two parts: parasympathetic and sympathetic. And she refers to this in the question where she says that like ancient man seems to have like two modes, like either rest and relax, completely relaxed, or danger fear mode, right? So these two aspects of the autonomic nervous system tend to represent that. The parasympathetic is associated with rest and digest, the sympathetic fight or flight. Well, guess what? It's not quite like that. I learned this recently there was a teleseminar that I was watching on sound healing, which is a fascinating topic, especially for a musician. So it turns out that the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems have, each of them has two modes. Each of them has two modes. They have a mode that they function in when life is perceived and experienced as traumatic, and they have a mode that they function in when life is perceived as like an opportunity. Well, we've heard that concept before, right? But this now we're going more deeply and we do some healing for it to kind of get everything, to get everybody optimized. All right. So when the parasympathetic nervous system is experiencing trauma, it tends to sort of shut down the body and can create a lot of feelings of like heaviness and I can't move forward, and can actually give rise to feelings like depression. And when the parasympathetic nervous system is feeling like the experience is analyzing the experience as an opportunity, then there's the system kind of relaxes and flows with it, flows with the experience. The sympathetic nervous system, when it experiences trauma, goes into fight or flight. But the sympathetic nervous system, when it's experiencing opportunity, goes into bliss. So we can look at the parasympathetic as sort of a non-activity, like not acting in the relative in either case. And we can look at the sympathetic nervous system as acting in the relative in either case, basically. And on the seminar that I watched, one of the things that I discovered that was mentioned was that when the sympathetic, that for certain like really peak physical experiences, like athletes that are in the zone, or peak sexual experiences, that's the sympathetic nervous system that's actually functioning there. So that's very interesting, isn't it? Because up till now, we've been sort of thinking of these two as sort of like one's a friend and one's an enemy or something like that. But no. So the real key here is how do we slice and dice our experience so that it's always seen as an opportunity and it's never seen as a threat, no matter how like. Because the thing is that even if you're in a threatening situation, if the nervous system is functioning like this is an opportunity, you will make better decisions. You will flow. You will flow. You will flow. You will flow. And I'm not going to bring up a lot of examples, but I do have friends who've had near-death experiences that really that was the key to their surviving and actually coming out the other end not dead. So yeah, just slightly fixing that. Okay, so it comes down to analysis, synthesis and analysis of experience, right? Because if we analyze the experience as a threat, then it comes out, we respond to it. The nervous system is automatically triggered to respond like a threat. And if we analyze it the other way, so analysis and synthesis, I think we could say inference. Inference is like taking in the information, analyzing it, and then drawing a conclusion. Judgment, on the other hand, is taking information, analyzing it, and coming up with a value assessment on it, a value assessment. And I think the difference, this is what I'm seeing, is the difference between inference and judgment is one of the main things that makes a difference between life being threatening and life being an opportunity. With inference, because there's no value judgment, the mind stays open and the awareness stays open to just sort of receive the experience as it's coming. But as soon as a judgment gets made, it kind of like locks down and it starts to lock a lot of like beliefs and beliefs into, it starts to activate beliefs and certain types of conditioned behaviors. It locks them into with the experience and we start to associate with the experience. And that also causes impressions to get lodged in the system. So what we're really looking at here is, and see, this is something that we have control over. You and I, we have control over whether we take an experience on the level, you know, when we analyze our experience, we do it on from the angle of inference, or we do it from the angle of judgment. Like, we have a choice here, which is beautiful, because this is the junction point between something that happens automatically in the body. Sorry, I changed my position. We go out of focus. Something that's happening automatically at a level that we have no control, to some, all of a sudden, this is the control panel. We're at the control panel here. Every imbalance in the system, every imbalance, like the imbalance that would cause a person to judge rather than simply infer, for example, everyone we can find, if we go back to its source, we're going back to the seed of it, is always the same seed. Really, at the root, it's always the same seed. So this is another new piece of information that just came up from since the last time we met. And this is that the seed, if we wanted to define it, is the illusion of separation. Essentially, it's the illusion of separation. So what happens? Totality, unmanifest wholeness, one becomes many. And in order for one to appear, I should say appears as many, it appears as many. In order for one to appear as many, it has to leverage the illusion that it is many. It has to leverage a principle or a law of nature that causes it to appear as many. We wouldn't have a universe. We literally wouldn't, the source of creation wouldn't do what it does if it weren't for that function taking place in the gap between the unmanifest and the manifest. So it's happening at like a really deep level of consciousness, way down at like the deepest level of the causal body. For those who are unfamiliar, I have this like, you know, spectrum of density. You've got the physical at the surface, then subtler like that. So the very, very deepest level, right before nothing, right before unmanifest, there's this little law of nature that's sitting there that says, well, the one has to appear as many. So we have to bring in some value of illusion, because the one is always one. It really is. The truth is there's only one, but it's necessary. Downloads coming in for everybody right here. Downloads into the head, downloads into the heart. We don't have to look upon the illusion of separation as a threat or an enemy. Instead, we look upon the principle that it tends to cover the one. It tends to shroud the one with the many, because the way our physiologies are formed and the way our senses of perception are, we tend to favor awareness of the diversity of creation, and it takes a little bit more effort and an inward stroke of awareness to get to the source of creation, which is why we do our silence at the beginning, right? Because we're actually consciously saying, hey, I'm looking here to the source of creation. So I was looking at this over the last week or so, and I thought to myself, why is it that the one is overshadowed by the many. After all, the one is definitely dominant. The one is the source of the many. So why is it overshadowed? How could it be overshadowed? Because the many is obviously more of an illusion and the one is the reality. So how could that even happen? And what I noticed was that at that very deep level of the causal body, there's like a little bit of, it's like a little bit of crudeness or something. There's something happening at that spot where, for one thing, the one wants to know itself through its own expression. So there's kind of like a urgent type of desire. There's like a ardent desire to become the many and to show itself as the many. So that desire pushes the expression of the universe. It pushes it as fast as it can go. If it went slower, we would be able to integrate the one at every step of the way. And that's really what we're doing as human beings. That's one of the ways that divinity is working through us as us. Like, this is what energy healing is about, that the symptom is there on the surface and we realize, oh, well, the solution, the healing is to integrate wholeness. So the principle here is, how do we integrate wholeness at that really fine level of the causal body? Because if we can integrate right there, then the one will not be lost. Then, if we do it from its root, then everything that comes forward, everything that makes its way to the surface is going to have wholeness or totality deeply enmeshed. Wholeness will not be lost. And when wholeness is not lost, then, as we've talked about before, those of you who have been with me, you can look at my video on the ego, that one of the technologies for not seeing the world as a threat is that when threatening things start to happen, to move perception over to the universal level of experience, to slide. And we get used to sliding our awareness across the spectrum of ego, from individual ego to universal ego. It's all ego, it's all your ego, and your body is your individual body and your cosmic body. All of this is all of us. There's only one. So part of that story is ego is one of the finest. In Vedic science, there are 8 prakritis, and the prakritis are the structures of nature, basically. And they go from more gross or dense to more subtle, and the subtlest one is ego. So we can say this is happening in the causal body, but we can also say that this particular healing is happening at the level of ego. We can say that, because really that's where that wave of one becoming many can get confused. That's where the confusion or the illusion sets in. So when we call it the illusion, I'm just getting this new from you guys right now because y'all are bright lights. So when we call it the illusion of separation, it's not that separation is really an illusion, because separation is just part of the mechanic by which wholeness, the one wholeness, is knowing its own nature. And so we can say, well, there is no separation because it's just one wholeness knowing all of itself. That's what the whole universe is. That's true, but it expresses itself. It has this function that it does where it expresses itself as the diversity of creation. So we could say the separation mechanism is not really an illusion. It's part of the mechanics of manifestation. And it's good to just be able to kind of open up to that rather than looking at it as a threat. If we use the word illusion, we start to think, oh, illusion opposite of truth, right? And I want to be with truth and I want to hold truth. But if instead of thinking of it as illusion of separation, we can just think of it as the truth of the mechanism of the manifesting, the fundamental mechanism of the manifesting process. From that perspective, not only does it not seem like a threat, it's allows our body systems, our parasympathetic nervous system, to sort of relax into it a little bit and to be able to analyze and define that mechanic, a mechanic by which one becomes many. The better we understand it, the more autonomy we have over what manifests for us in our world and in our life. So understanding it at that really fundamental level, the level of ego, and even maybe we can say even deeper than that, right into the gap between the unmanifest and the manifest. This is how it works. This is how we are able to leverage the mechanism that defines one becoming many to support our ability as individuals to express divinity with even ever greater perfection, ever greater. And that we can say anything that you think that we wish we have wishes and desires, and I want to be well, and I want to have opulence, and I want to have wonderful loving relationships and all that. But all these wants and desires are riding like little waves on top of the bigger wave, which is that one wholeness of creation deeply and fully expressing and knowing itself. Because all these things we can name that we like, that we want, they're all parts of that. All right. Okay, I didn't know we were going to go there and that was going to take so long. It almost took the whole hour. Oh, I'm so sorry. But it was really an awesome question. Thank you for that. And that just means we have more systems we can look at now and tomorrow. We might not get to social systems in this webinar, I'm thinking, because there's still a bunch of systems we need to look at. So I think maybe the better thing to do will be to do another webinar. Maybe we can just make a note of that, to do another webinar on collective systems. All right. I wanted to go from the nervous system to the endocrine system. And the reason was that the endocrine system really starts up in the brain, essentially, because the pituitary gland, which is the overseeing administrator for the endocrine system, is lodged, it's born, it sits up in the limbic area of the brain. So it's really, in a way, kind of, we have the nervous system, and then out of that grows the endocrine system. Now we get to get into a kind of like, I don't know, it feels like a simpler field. Anyway, thank you for this question for the endocrine system. So now we're going to take a minute. We're just going to put our awareness. We're going to start this section of the healing time, putting our attention on the endocrine system. We start with the pituitary. It's like right up kind of in front and down of the brain. And what I notice when I put my attention on the pituitary gland is it is full of feeling. It is just full of feeling. Also, I don't know how many of you are experiencing this, but we don't normally put our attention on like real isolated organs in our body unless they hurt, right? So the pituitary isn't used to having a big focus or flow of your awareness. So what mine isn't, certainly, because I don't like often make a point of putting my attention on my pituitary gland. So what I'm experiencing as I put my attention on the pituitary gland is the pituitary gland kind of feels like, oh, she's looking at me. You see other people raising their hands too. It's like, oh, I'm not used to getting this much attention. Oh my gosh. And there's a kind of almost a feeling like there had been this loving longing for this attention. There had been this sort of deep unspoken desire for your beautiful attention to be on your pituitary gland in your endocrine system. And it was just waiting. It was just like being patient. It was just, loving you and trying to do its best. Well, it just waited And then when the attention goes, it's almost like what my pituitary gland is feeling is it almost feels overwhelmed because it wanted that for so long and didn't get it. And now that it's getting it, it's like, oh my God, I'm finally getting what I really wanted. Oh, you know, like the little kid who gets a puppy for Christmas, that kind of thing. It's like the kid's so happy, bursts into tears, Anyway, I'm feeling, that's what my pituitary gland is feeling right now, putting my attention on. So this is good. It tells me two things. It tells us two things. It tells us that it's good to put the attention there more often so that it's not so overly hypersensitive. And it also tells us just how incredibly, incredibly beloved and dear and precious our endocrine systems are. And also how sort of attuned they are to feelings. And of course, that's a no-brainer, no pun intended, that, the pituitary is continuously responsible for producing those neurochemicals that give expression to feelings. So one of the things that I'm noticing is putting attention on the pituitary gland is that the pituitary gland remembers. It remembers points in the history of the life. It's a little bit like the way people's hearts remember, right? The heart remembers all the great heights of glorious, loving experiences that you've ever had, and also the times it was hurt, something like that. Well, the pituitary gland also has a memory element to it. And it remembers especially times when it was like glorified, where it's in its glory, like, when the body starts to transform from child body into adult body, the pituitary goes through like a special dance that it does at that time. And I'm seeing the memories of that, still held as special or sacred. And also potential, like a really interesting untapped potential in the pituitary gland. Oh, it's so interesting we're doing this. Like I just have one word, endocrine. I've got somebody who sent in a question. Can you please do a healing for the endocrine system? But I have no idea what's gonna, y'all adorable ones are the ones who are shining the light that lets this information come forward. So thank you for that. So there's this untapped potential in the pituitary gland. One of the first things is, of course, as soon as we notice potential, we kind of fall back on our blueprint, the blueprint for the life in the body, which is pure potential. And remember, the pure potential, it's like that light, right? I'm glad I picked this background. It's got this brightness, the brightness of your pure potential before it has become divine expression, before it has been realized. The pituitary gland is, and its administrative function for the other glands in the body, awareness is folding back into its own nature in the pituitary gland, and the pituitary gland is examining its pure potential. It's kind of like comparing and contrasting what is being experienced at the moment versus what is that pure full potential. And that light of Parabrahman, the light that goes beyond anything that can even be described, that is sitting like a backdrop. I could pick a different backdrop that looks more like nothing or something. But yeah, that Parabrahman is acting as an anchor. I would say the pure potential is anchoring into that expression of absolute totality, wholeness, absolute wholeness, absolute. So the pure potential is like refining and becoming more opulent. It's becoming, there's a wave of awareness that's going kind of like back and forth between the endocrine system and the field of unmanifest totality. And as that happens, it's causing integration. So there's an integration of the light of divinity, of divine being, the light of absolute being is integrating, and it's using your pure potential as like the vehicle or the channel through which it's integrating. I'm also seeing meridians that run from the heart energy center to the pituitary gland, very important. So these meridians are clearing. A lot of stuff is clearing from these meridians. It's different for different people, but they're layers of imbalances. But as I mentioned before, all the imbalances essentially come back to that principle that when the wholeness starts to become many, the wholeness gets shrouded or gets covered. Like that's like probably the seed of the seed of all seeds of all imbalance. So I could be naming off a laundry list of different imbalances that are clearing, but suffice it to say that what's ultimately clearing is any shadow that blocks the flow of that brilliant light of eternal wholeness. So it feels like there's a light shining. And this is very interesting because the pituitary is quite lit up right now because we've been focusing our awareness on it. It's gotten used to it. It's not crying anymore. It's not like, oh my God, I can't believe you're putting your attention on. No, it's like, I gotcha. I'm right here. I'm with you. I love you. And then the heart area is actually able to be nourished. Oh, this is so interesting. The heart, the physical heart, and the circulatory system, and the immune system. Wow, because the immune system is overseen by the thymus, which is also a gland, right? So the thymus is also part of the endocrine system. But the endocrine system is able to cultivate mixtures of different neurochemicals that are incredibly, incredibly nourishing and healing for the circulatory system, for the heart. I bet. Now this is just what I'm kind of seeing as an overall general patterning that's happening in our group right now during this time of the healing. But I would imagine that if the endocrine system, I just moved my desk. I got too excited. If the endocrine system can make a particular like sophisticated combination of neurochemicals that is especially healing for the heart, then I bet you money it can make mixtures that are especially good for other systems of the body too, yes? Whatever system is ailing at the time. So let's just look into that. Yes. So download coming in for everyone. Oh, yes, we're good. We still have like 5 minutes. Download coming in for everyone of the formulas. The download, as I mentioned before, all this knowledge, all this like spiritual knowledge and spiritual information, it's archived at various places in the cosmos. So it's received down in through the crown of the head. That's why we did that other clearing earlier in the nervous system, so you could be an open vessel and receive this information nicely. And what's happening is it's like the heart is talking to the endocrine system or the circulatory system, the intelligence or the devata of the heart, or the circulatory is talking to the devata of the endocrine. And it's like I think the hypothalamus is definitely involved here. The hypothalamus sits very close to the pituitary, and the hypothalamus gives information. There's a lot of information exchanged between the hypothalamus and the pituitary, so that kind of makes sense. But there's definitely a very clearly defined reading that the hypothalamus is getting on the nature of the intelligence of the circulatory system. So we're understanding, at this time, we're understanding our circulatory systems in a way that we have not ever understood them quite before. And part of the story is isolating out that particular system. So we're just looking at it in like fine detail. And then the second part of it is not just looking at it physically, but looking at its energy structure. So that means looking at the etheric structure of the circulatory system and then diving even deeper than that and looking at the intelligence that is responsible for all functions of the circulatory system. And what I'm noticing is that the heart energy center is producing a wave of like sort of deep loving recognition that's coming back up and is going directly into the hypothalamus, and it's like nourishing, it's causing nourishment in the hypothalamus. That makes a lot of sense. Like I hadn't thought that we would be doing healings, excuse me, for the hypothalamus, but it makes a lot of sense because the hypothalamus is the organ of our brain that lets us look inside our bodies. Like that's where the inner vision is that's the organ responsible for the inner vision. That's where it's centered in a sense. The thalamus, it processes all the outside information, right? But the hypothalamus is like the mother and it processes all the inside information. So the hypothalamus clearly is quite an archive of comprehensive understanding of all the body systems. Well, we like to go to the seed, don't we? We do healings for the hypothalamus, all the systems improve. I was wondering how I was going to get through this long list. Now I know. Just go to the source. Hypothalamus is associated with the moon and with mother. Hypothalamus is receiving also this download that I mentioned before, which is still coming in from cosmic regions. This download is presenting, is providing access to blueprints and templates for all the systems of the body as optimized, how to optimize every system of the body. Good. We want that. We want the cosmic mechanic to be in here optimizing all of our body systems for sure. And part of the story there is that I'm seeing something that looks like a matrix forming in the astral structure of the hypothalamus, also the pituitary, because we're working with that. Oh, it looks like, a lot of times matrices. Okay, so for those of you who are new, matrix is a word you can look up on my knowledge base. And it basically is an astral form that brings together threads of consciousness in an extremely highly orderly fashion, and also in many cases in a kind of fractaline fashion, because matrices are a little bit, they'll be like crystals, that they're like patterns within patterns within patterns, so that even the molecular shape of this isn't actually the best example because that's not the way that crystal normally, this would be good. This is a really good example because here you can actually see it. What we've got going on here are little tiny shapes that are the same shape as the bigger shapes, right? And if you go smaller on this crystal, I love this, it's such a pretty crystal. If you go smaller on this crystal, even the molecules are in this hexagonal shape. Okay, so fractal structure. So this is actually happening now for the whole body. It's expanding to the whole body. So matrix for the whole body, also for each system of the body receives the matrix, also each organ in each system receives the matrix, also each tissue, also each cell, all cellular structures, The mitochondria, they love you. The mitochondria love this. The gut bacteria love this. And I'm examining the matrix to find out what kind of matrix it is. So the first thing that I'm noticing is that a protection matrix is coming in. Oh, that's so interesting. Not what I was expecting. Not what I was expecting. I'm asking source of creation, is it possible that we could have like a 112 point matrix, which is the one that lets the one shine through the veil of separation, or the veil of illusion of separation. It lets the one shine through. That's a 112 point matrix. It's all the ways to reach wholeness. Just feeling that. And that's really getting those waves of energy rolling through the body as that happens. Starting in the center here in the hypothalamus, pituitary, and then it just expands to include all the systems, all the organs. And it expands out and expands in to include all the cells. Again, I'm kind of feeling some little waves of purification in the body, because the body is like, it's like a man who was thirsty for so long. He was thirsty for so long, and then he got to drink, and it was so nice. Oh, the heart especially. Oh, so sweet. So much love and gratitude, just flowing, 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 always offering that back to the source of creation where it multiplies to infinity. And of course, being of the source of creation it's like the playground where we play, that ocean, that field of purest light where we play together here. It activates and enlivens through this and shines even brighter. It's beautiful. Okay, guys, now look, I see lots of questions. This has been happening. This has been my pattern now for several times, is that I see all the questions come in, and I can't answer them all during session 1 on Friday. So what I'm going to do is, because it's a lot of questions, I'm going to write down your questions. I'll make notes of your questions. And tomorrow, as usual, we'll start out at the beginning with all the questions, and we'll just do all the questions. And I have my little paper too with all the different systems, and we'll look at more systems, because I know there's a question about the lymphatic system. So we'll be sure to catch that one tomorrow as well. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do. It's going to be really fun. And of course, it's very exciting to approach this whole topic now from the angle of all of you guys' perceptions and ideas and questions and everything. It's really wonderful. So thank you. And thank you everyone who sent questions in tonight. You know, I love you and honor you. And I will address all of these tomorrow for sure. And I hope you can join me. And if you can't, don't worry, because everyone will receive the recordings and you can watch it on your own time and just enjoy. And all the healings that we do are just as powerful. In some ways, I think even more powerful sometimes when we see them after the fact, because more and more people are partaking in the healings. And the more people partake, the more layers of richness become sort of enmeshed in the healings. So thank you all for being the pioneers on these, and the first ones who are experiencing it first with me live. We're doing this together, and as we go on, it'll go out into the world and become more and more and more powerful. So thank you all. I really love our time together. It's just so lovely, and I look forward to seeing, oh, bless your hearts, yeah. I look forward to seeing everybody again tomorrow, or most of you, hopefully, and if not tomorrow, the time that you get a chance to be with me in these recordings. All right, everybody, have a lovely day for those who are on the Pacific Rim. Have a lovely night with a deep, luxurious sleep in the stellar lights, and we'll see you all again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.